You are live. Okay, so just the two of us today. Hello and welcome. I hope everything's going well in the crypto land. It looks like we are having a little bit of a bull run this week, which has been really, really interesting to watch. If you can hear us okay and the visuals are okay, give us a message in the comments just to let us know you're there. It's a bit lonely with just two people here. Exodus, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I was saying just before the pre-show, we're all going down with cold. So if I end up having a coughing fit in a minute, I'll probably mute. But yeah, I'll try my best not to. But it's winter over here in England. It's starting to pinch a little bit. Excuse me. Here it goes. Oh my goodness, couldn't even get through the first paragraph. So we're going to be looking at the Decred developer Ask Me Anything. Now, a massive hello, Cazelle, how you doing, buddy? A massive thank you for Exodus here because he actually put this together. He reached out to the developers, including Dave Collins, Blockchain Buck, and some others. And I find this a really interesting process. I actually find this more useful than pretty much anything else, if I'm honest. And it's one of the things that I really like about Decred is if you ask the developers a sensible question, they will literally elaborate on it and they will go into depth. And I've had this with Dave Collins so many times, and I had lots of really really interesting private conversations with Dave. I've put a video together and he's gone, "Hey Phoenix, it's not quite right. It should be like this." One particular case was we were talking about. I put a video together about how hard forks and soft forks are different, and in particular about the argument of backwards compatibility. And obviously, this is a nonsense argument. And Dave kind of put me straight on that and actually walked me through why the reason that backwards compatibility is actually nothing. I mean, it's actually forwards compatibility that's the issue there. But if you engage with any other community, you probably wouldn't get that. You wouldn't get such a spirit of people trying to make sure people understand the tech so they can actually kind of well, their knowledge could be better, and so we can actually pass better knowledge on. And I really appreciate that, which was my point there. So X has put this together, and it's absolutely amazing. So the first thing, and I'll chip away at some of these questions. I haven't put all of them in there because there was just so many and there's so much discussion. But if you want to see this, you can head on over to Reddit, the Decred page, and it's the Decred developer Ask Me Anything, and it really is a great and interesting read. Um, so the first question that I've got on my list is in then, and this was specifically asked to Dave Collins, is what do you think could be the next big thing for Decred? And he's got a philosophy where over the last few years he's mainly worked on the core aspect of the protocol, making sure that everything is secure from a DCRD perspective. And what I thought was interesting about this was where he's now starting to move away from that. He feels that the actual core is so solid that the advantages now are kind of reducing each time we look at it, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. He's now starting to look at other areas, in particular, the decentralized meeting place for mixes, which has been on the roadmap for a long, long time. And then the other one, which is I'm really looking forward to, is the working towards efficient and scalable scaffolding. What are your thoughts on this, Exodus?
Sure. Let me start off by saying just the reasoning behind starting the Ask Me Anything. It had been a long time since we had one, and I had really enjoyed the ones in the past with just such amazing questions and answers. And it really kind of spiced up our Reddit. I think the Reddit was getting a little quiet, and this Ask Me Anything kind of it was pretty, lots of participation and a lot of good questions. So that was the rationale for doing it, and I hope we can do one maybe every 6 months or so. Have it be a regular thing. And huge shout out to Dave for participating and
Yeah,
taking the time to write up all those answers. And um, we had a question answer from Buck as well from the Dex, which was really
yeah.
fantastic. And you asked me what I think the next big thing for Decred is.
Yeah,
Correct.
this was a point that was put out to Dave. What's the next big thing for Decred? So his response was two things that
Right.
he wants to work on was the centralized meeting place for the mixes, and also to for working towards a more efficient and scalable scaffolding, which is what's going on top of the actual layer, which
Right,
I thought was
right.
really interesting.
So I saw some pull requests for the mixing. So the mixing is going to be done in DCRD as opposed to relying on a central server, which can, I believe the central server is able to see certain things, certain inputs and outputs. So they're moving the mixing to DCRD, which is basically decentralizing the process. And I believe this week they had some pull requests, meaning they made some major progress on that. So that's something that's going to be here, I think, in the short term. And then right in the long term, they said he's going to be working on something like NFTs, and that the work done in DCRD was diminishing. It wasn't super exciting, and there's not really too much to do. And of course, that work in DCRD, which is Decred's full node, is super, super important. But to most people, it's not super interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the points that we'll get onto later is the fact that Dave's been refactoring all of the code to make it more streamlined. I mean, I think um, Jet User, I think it was, is who basically said that no other blockchain is actually refactoring their code quite as much as what Decred is. Now, I can't say that that's factual or not, but I would imagine that's the case.
I think
Sorry.
Decred's SPV has the fastest sync. I think Dave said this a while ago, but it has the fastest sync of any coin, and it's probably
Yeah,
one of the more optimized, probably the most optimized
yeah,
full node. For a lot of these projects, you need like a data center, like Ethereum. You need a whole data center to run the node, and no one's actually running their own nodes. They're just looking at someone else's for the data. So that's an advantage Decred has. Now, of course, the unfortunate thing is the larger market largely they ignore this type of stuff, even though it's super
yeah.
important. And this is kind of one of the issues in cryptocurrency today, where Decred is so ahead of everyone, but people more so care about, oh, I want the NFT, I want the meme token that goes up. And hopefully there's a swing back to these fundamentals, these things that really matter at some point. And I think that's why a lot of the Decred community are still here, because they understand the importance of all this.
Yeah, I mean, I keep hearing about these scaling debates, and I put a video together this week, kind of just comparing blockchains that scale and blockchains that don't, just to kind of illustrate the fact if you want money that is decentralized and it's kind of and it's peer to peer and permissionless, you really can't have that the minute it gets too large and you get a data center involved. So when I hear these advocates saying about putting audio and putting video and putting images on chain, it kind of it makes me, what, that's fine, but really and truly, if you think about it, in a sensible way, what's meant to be happening with Decred and Bitcoin is it's money. I don't need to house my art collection online. And if you want to streamline it and you want it to be peer to peer, you have to really think, okay, I have to run the infrastructure. And it was one of the reasons also why I was so keen to see Decode have GPU and more specifically CPU actually, is because the more somebody can run the infrastructure, just a normal person like me and you, the more we can actually this stuff becomes permissionless, and the more decentralized it gets, and you get away from these frameworks of housing it on Google or housing it on Amazon or whatever. So yeah, absolute amazing point, and which brings me to the second question, which is are you going to embrace smart contract stuff like RGB in the future? And I think whether it's RGB, I'm not sure, but it certainly is going to be along those lines, I think, where it's going to be on the layer 2, or it's going to be on the layer 3, hopefully connected to the Lightning Network. A comment that Jake made a few months back was the Lightning Network is the army that we have. And I really, that resounds with me a lot, because we've spent a lot of money to get to that point, and a lot of development, both in the Decred community and the Bitcoin community, has gone in to making this something quite huge. And I know that the Bitcoin guys are having issues, but I just think you've got to kind of get through that and get to the other side. Um, what was your views on the RGB stuff and the scaffolding?
Well, personally, I'm not someone who has ever touched NFTs. I'm not a big fan, but I understand there's a lot of people who are interested in that kind of stuff, and they're excited about that kind of stuff. And if Decred can do that in a way that doesn't clog up the chain, and it's meaningful and it's unique, sure, why not? And if Dave feels it's something he wants to do, then of course he should pursue that. Um, I'm not really sure what other features Decred could pursue. A lot of people say Decred is now feature complete now that the Dex is here, Lightning Network, privacy. There's not really too many things you can add unless you start to go crazy and you want to do the smart contracts and some sort of stable coin. But I'm not really, and this is kind of a good thing in a way that there's not really maybe developers can concentrate on like integrations, for instance,
Mm.
BTC pay server, these kinds of things to maybe get Decred some more, real world use.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's accurate in terms of layer one. I definitely think that as far as the layer one goes, you really don't want much more transactions or anything kind of outside of the scope of what we've already got. But in terms of layer two, I mean, the potentials are huge. Actually, I just look at what's happening with Bison Relay. You know, that being built on top, and I also look at the timestamply, which I think we're calling it now, which actually has so many potentials that haven't even been realized yet, which could be really exciting. And we've got a question on that in a bit, so I won't go too much into that just yet. But yeah, in terms of things that we can do off chain, I think there's still quite a bit. In terms of things we can do on chain, I think it's so streamlined. This is that exactly where it should be. Um, what's Cozell saying? I think we may have missed the first half a minute. Oh, I wonder if we went. I wonder if we went dead for a bit. Sorry, guys, if the audio went and the video
He-
went.
He's saying he missed the first half minute. So
Oh, he missed it. Okay, okay. Yeah, I see that from Jay as well. Okay, so question three. They asked, um, what other crypto projects do you follow? Now, Dave's response has always been quite the same for a year or so now, where he said, I basically follow the advancing technology. So he tends to look at the technical journals for cryptography, which in one of our chats he actually gave me a bunch of links, which I think I've lost, which is a bit of a shame. And that's where he finds out what's going on. One thing I did find interesting about this question, I don't know if you, before I go on to, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
on
One thing
on
I
what? Oh, sorry. Go
sorry,
ahead.
what projects Dave was following, but one thing I did find interesting about this, some of the responses to this, is one of the questions that Dave said he was following was BCH, which when I looked at it, I thought, I wonder why he's following that. And then I scrolled down a bit, and it actually turns out that in 2020 they actually activated Assert on their blockchain. I thought, oh bloody hell, they actually had it before us, which surprised me massively.
Yeah, that was interesting. I certainly liked his answer that he's not following any particular coin. He's just looking at the technology out there. I'm curious, what coins do you follow besides Decred or coins that you're interested or follow closely?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I typically try and stay within the projects that are trying to stay to the 21 million max cap. Um, but that has got diluted ever so slightly for me over the last year. So Monero, I have a look at Monero. I'm not 100% sure on Monero, but one thing I do like about it is actually its tail emission, which and once again we'll probably get onto this in a minute, but when Decred in 40 years time or whatever does have to decide on how to distribute the um, incentives to continue pr- proof of stake and continue being profitable for those people running the network, the tail emission to me might be one of those options. So I am following that quite closely. Another project that I follow, which is a bit of a bowl of contention really, but it's Nano. And the only reason is because I want to see if they can make a feeler structure work. As it currently stands up, I'm not convinced on it at all. But I do still follow that one a little bit. I was following Zcash for a while until they got that big hack, and their blockchain went from 30 gigabytes all the way up to 200 and something. So that kind of put me off that, because now obviously running the full node is a bit of a pain in the ass. Um, what other ones? Oh, I have started buying Polygon, actually, Matic, just so that I can actually move some USDC. I want to see if that works. That seems quite interesting to me. But other than that, oh, Faro as well. Faro seems quite interesting. They're in the process of putting Dandelion Plus Plus together, and the Stark addresses, which looks really interesting. How about yourself? What projects do you follow?
Big fan of Monero. I hold some in Cake Wallet actually. Really great wallet. Happy that's coming to I believe they did a pull request for the iOS version of Cake Wallet this week. So it's coming along nicely, the Cake Wallet stuff. Um Really unfortunate with their that dev fund wallet got hacked and drained.
Oh yeah,
And it goes to show, how, Decred has this insanely secure treasury where that will just, never happen. And then people, uh, don't realize these types of things. So happy to be in, because when you see that type of thing, the first thing you think is, could this happen to Decred? Is our treasury going to have this attack? And it's like, well, no, we have these op codes. It has to be explicitly approved by stakeholders, so it's just insanely secure, and we're very lucky. And
yeah. I
so
mean,
I do
what we should.
Monero. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just to elaborate on the Monero wallet, it was something like 1,200 Monero that just got drained from that account. And from the discussion I saw, it was just one person holding the key, and possibly their security wasn't great or something like that, or maybe two people holding the key. But it was a single key. It wasn't a multi-sig or anything like that. But,
Right.
sorry.
And so besides Monero, I think obviously Zcash is interesting, especially because they have the dev fund going on. One interesting figure, since we're discussing Zcash, is their monthly spend is about 600,000 USD a month on their from their treasury, and Decreds is around between 60 to 80. So, there's sometimes there's talk about, oh, Decred spends maybe too much money and contractors sell and it affects the price. We're spending like 10 times less than Zcash.
Yeah,
While maybe I'm biased here, but the development output is maybe greater. um,
yeah.
so that's
Well,
something really interesting to take into account. I'm sure it's like that with many other cryptocurrencies that have some sort of expenses and dev funds. And besides Zcash, Firo is something I need to look into more. I really like Ruben Yap, who
yeah,
leads it.
yeah,
And then there's one other called Beam. It's a Mimblewimble coin. It tanked because they got delisted from Binance, but they did a lot of interesting things. They built confidential assets, which is like kind of smart contracts where everything's private. And they're another good example of how you can do a lot of good things. You can have a really strong development and still not succeeding in the market because their price collapsed basically. They got delisted from Binance. And it shows how much power is in the exchanges and how much power is up to network effect. Um, but yeah, those are the projects I mainly follow.
yeah. I've not. I have seen Beam in the past, but I haven't really followed it. I'm not a massive privacy advocate. Actually, I need to learn more about it. Um, and I don't necessarily follow the narrative that basically says a blockchain has to be closed off and completely private. I think, in actual fact, that causes all kinds of problems from a point of view of like, if you want to know if things are happening the way they're meant to be happening, for just a normal person like me who doesn't really get into the deeper maths, I can do that on Decred very, very easily. Whereas if you pointed me towards Monero and said, "Hey, tell me if the supply's on track," I wouldn't have a clue how to do that really.
Right. We're getting kind of
And
the
and
best of both worlds. And especially with these exchanges, the way they're going after non-transparent chains, it's very scary. And as much as we like to not, diss the centralized exchanges, they play an important part of the ecosystem right now. And most of the market isn't really ready for, something like our decks, at least at this point in time.
unfortunately, I think that is the case. Yeah, no, it's an interesting point you made about the treasuries for both Zcash and Monero. And I talked to the Zec Hub guy, and one of the questions, I think, it was one of our live streams actually, and one of the questions I said to him is how much is actually in the pot, and it was very dubious on whether how much was actually in the pot, which I found quite strange. Whereas Decred, if someone said, "Hey, how much is in the Decred pot?" I said, "Was it 740?" Or I could quickly go and check. No, other way around, 870, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
um,
displayed right in the wallet, it's displayed right on the block explorer, and
yeah.
it's I think every
So
single, like, block that goes into it's displayed, it's completely transparent, and now with the T-spends, it's even more transparent with the spending, and, for those of you who don't know, the T-spend is live right now, and you can set the settings to vote in your wallet, and I believe the settings, you can just set it as yes, and it just stays as yes for
yeah,
the
yeah,
T-spends, which is nice, I think, 'cause you don't have to keep opening the wallet.
yeah. I think so too. Otherwise, you've just got to wait for it to vote and all the rest of it. But yeah, another interesting thing about the Monero wallet hack, if that was to happen on Decred, if there was an instance where they could get past the multi sig of 41,000, um, the maximum amount that they could spend in 24 days is only 150% of what was produced in the previous month. So they couldn't do a complete drain, which I think is quite interesting. Um, that's based on one of the rules. Um, yeah, fantastic stuff. Actual fact, there's so much there to unpack, and that was an interesting thing that just came up a couple of weeks ago with the Monero stuff. But interesting to see how that unfolds. The next thing then, excuse me, is what will happen with POS and POW after emission drops too low? So basically, how will we incentivize the miners? How will we incentivize the proof of stake people? And one thing that Dave's alluded to here is that it will probably be a a fee change where at the moment only miners receive the transaction fees. So although the block reward is oh my goodness, I can't remember what it is now, 89% proof of stake, 1% proof of work, and 10% to the treasury, the actual fees go completely to the proof of work. So that's one thing that he alluded to there. What are your thoughts on how that might pan out?
Well, I'm not super, I don't think about that too much because, of course, in Decred, it's so, streamlined to make these consensus changes, and it's fair, and it gets done in a timely manner, and we have a place to do these discussions. I think when that time comes, which is what, in 20, 30, 40, 50 years,
Yeah,
someone can propose an idea to fix that. So that's not something I'm super concerned about in Decred's case, at least.
yeah, it's one
Because
thing,
we
Dave.
have the tools to adapt and evolve, with the on-chain voting and consensus changes.
Yeah, it's one thing Dave said is that the tail emission is so long, very deliberately, so we can see what's going on. We can make those decisions. I wasn't necessarily, and maybe it's my understanding. I've not quite got my head around this, but my understanding is it might not be a great idea for all the fees or to split the fees to proof of stake as well as proof of work, just purely because you might have scenarios where the two entities are completely in line with each other, and it's always my thought that they should be almost polar opposites. They should be validators of each other. So if they're both going right, we want all of these rewards. Who's validating to say, hey, follow the rules properly. So that's one concern I had. The other two things that I was thinking about in terms of, and we are miles away, so it's not anything that I'm worried about. Anything like I say, this won't even become an issue until 2020, 2040 or something like that, or past that. But the things that I was thinking about is lost coins that reduce supply. How could this be overcome? And then could a similar tail emission to Monero's be used? And I think Monero currently has a 1% tail emission per year, which that's still it's still early days. I think that only started last year, so watching that very closely. Any final thoughts on
Nope.
that? Yeah, too
Yeah.
easy. Moving on.
Yeah.
Um, oh, this is quite a good question. I think this is from Jay, actually. Jay, this is one of yours. So, a lot of focus goes into how we bring new folk into Decred. But my question is, how do we keep them? What makes the people leave or give up on Decred? Massive bowl of contention here. We've had all kinds of things going on Twitter the last few months where people are getting into heated debates over stuff and falling out and whatnot. Um, But what are your thoughts on this? And I should say before Exodus answers, he's doing some massive work at the moment. For anyone not following Exodus, you should be following him on Twitter because he's working through promoted tweets. Which the last promoted tweet 60,000 views. Was that right?
Yeah, we want to start running more promoted tweets. That one was just a test. And yeah, you pay some money and Twitter promotes your tweet and it shows the tweet to people who aren't following you. So it's not like it shows it to the same people that follow you. It intentionally doesn't show it to them. But it got like 60,000 impressions or views and a number of engagements. So I think that's probably the path forward as far as marketing Decred goes is, just doing some promotions, promoted tweets. We're going to start doing more. We might want to make some changes to the Decred website, or at least add some sort of landing page for new people, because you have to be aware of someone who's never heard of Decred. Some of these topics of what Decred is, it can be quite difficult, and you can't really just send someone to the Decred documentation page and expect them to just get it. So maybe we might want to make some changes there before we go really hard on the ads and promotions.
Yeah.
And as
Well,
far as
go on. Sorry.
um, yeah, as far as bringing people into Decred and keeping them, I think Decred's tech stack is incredibly convincing. It's just a matter of price action. Most people in cryptocurrency, they really only care about the price, and that's just the reality. That's not how I feel. I'm sure Phoenix, that's not how you feel, and a lot of people in Decred. But that's a major big thing. People want to see number go up, and they will choose the coin that goes up even if it doesn't have the fundamentals, like Solana, for instance. It can be arbitrarily shut down. Well, it goes up and you look at your profile and it's green. Now luckily Decred, we've seen some reversal lately. There's been some good price action lately where we are going up, but that's really how you're going to keep people and get people excited. And obviously that's something none of us control, and that's where things get difficult. But the best thing we can do is be a welcoming community. We can be a active community. We can um, generate memes, art, really try to get the message across, and that's how we can hopefully get people to stay.
Yeah, I was just chipping in just to say how great all of these experiments you've been doing on your excuse me, all of these experiments you've been doing on your Twitter account have been amazing. So running the quizzes, not quizzes, meme prizes and things like that was absolutely brilliant. The promotional tweets, I think that's going to go a long, long way to kind of getting engagement. But there's so much other stuff coming up, and the Vanguard group in particular. There's a couple of members I've kind of Tall Americano being one of them, and there was another one, but I can't remember the name. That are doing some really great work and trying to engage, and that's what I'd like to see a lot more of, especially from the
Pub
Vanguard group.
Pete's really active.
Sorry.
Pub
Yes.
Pete.
Yes. Yeah, and it's great to see that incentive has already brought those two members of the community forward, and they're getting involved in a really engaging way, taking on responsibilities. And for anyone that's complaining that certain things are not happening, we're a community of doers, and if you're sat there trying to manage us, it's not gonna help. You need to get on board and get stuck in really. And that's what I appreciate about the Vanguard guys, and I appreciate what Exodus is doing. It's going really well from what I can see. One other point that they've put forward, although we are, a lot of people get disincentivized by num go up. He said it's actually interesting to see that our turnover of developers is actually quite low. So we've managed to sustain all of those developers throughout all those hard times. You've only got to look at DCR Dex's development team, and the amount of people that contribute to the GitHub each month is huge. There's so many people, and well, just look at the repos. It's going so well on that account. So yeah, in terms of developer turnover, Decred's doing very well in that respect. Question 6. So, do you think that blockchains might play a substantial role in chain supply one day? This is a really interesting one to me, and this is what we were talking about at the beginning, where you can actually use the blockchain to do various things, and we already have this built into the layer one, where it actually in timestamply you can timestamp as many documents as you want, and then every amount I can't remember what the timing is. it might be 10 minutes. But every 10 minutes or so, it literally bundles all of those timestamps on chain, and it takes almost zero. It takes almost zero weight to the chain. But this is where it could come in really, really useful. Using for things for like um, supply chains to track parcels or to track things as they move between points. I think the blockchain, because it's unmutable, could be really, really useful in that respect. Any thoughts on that one?
I would love to see DCR time and timestamply get more use. They redid the website; it looks very nice now. And if it can be used for real world things, the more the better. Um, yeah, that would be an interesting idea or proposal if someone had to come along and integrate supply chain and DCR time. I would absolutely support it.
It'd be quite cool, wouldn't it? You could almost have like a QR code that has a parcel and all the relative information as it moves through. You kind of get tracked to it. One thing that I would like to see, but which I've been thinking about a little bit, is having timestamply link to files on Bison Relay. So where you basically keep the file on Bison Relay, but your proof of existence actually happens on timestamply. I think that quite useful. And could be a similar aspect with the tracking codes where all the information gets tracked on Bison Relay or something similar, and then gets printed to the chain or whatever in the end. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff there. And just a final point from Dave on that one is this stuff already exists on Politeia. So Politeia is already using this technology to kind of stamp its proposals and things like that and votes. What else we got? Number 7. Oh my goodness, there's so many of these questions. I might skip through some of them if they're not completely relevant, but we've got one here. Do you wish there was more developers working on Decred? And Dave's just said definitely, but he would specifically like more developers at the application level. So working Bison Relay and things. Go on, Nexus.
Yeah, I don't, that's a good question. Do we need more do you wish there were more developers? I wish there, yeah, sure, more talented developers because you don't want too much, dead weight per se. But yeah, of course, more people coming in, working, contributing, and that in itself is kind of a network effect of the more developers you come in, maybe you start a chain reaction of certain developers telling other people, hey, there's this thing called Decred. It's open source. It has a flexible contractor model. You can just come in, do some work, get paid in Decred, and it's all very hands off, right? There's no meetings, there's no performance reports. Um, you just need approval from stakeholders. But yeah, of course, I think we'd all like to see that. That is growth. More developers is a form of growth, and growth is always good.
Yeah. I mean, getting the application developers would be absolutely amazing. Another thought that I've been having lately, and we had about a year ago, so we had a conversation about um, games, so blockchain games, and just games in general, and partnerships that I would like to see are things like there's a game engine, there's an open source game engine that I quite like called Godot or Godot Engine, and I'd quite like to see partnerships with those guys because they're really quite good developers where they integrate modules, Decred modules into their platform, so you can actually run games as well. Now, one interesting thing there, talking about Nano earlier, is actually Nano built or one of the developers. I'm not sure if it was a Nano dev or if it was some Nano. That's who it was. Actually built a module for the Godot engine, so you can actually build games that use the Nano infrastructure. It doesn't work particularly well for layer one blockchains, obviously, but it would definitely work quite well for Lightning because they're so fast and stuff. Integrations like that would be quite nice. Bringing in developers from the gaming world, or even just setting up some sponsorship so that we could actually pull some of that tech in or combine some of our tech with theirs would be pretty cool. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, more app developers,
What I would like to
application.
see is maybe some sort of general core development proposal, and in that proposal, you have spare funds. You basically have money for outside developers who want to come in without having to go through the proposal process. Because as it stands right now, is let's say someone wants to come and contribute to Decred, technically in some way they might need a proposal to do that. And it's like, what if we just had some sort of approved funds, not a lot of money, but some sort of side money that if someone came in with an idea, they wouldn't have to run to Politea to get approval, which is kind of a process in itself. It's a form of
Yeah.
bureaucracy that is, it might be a roadblock for a lot of people who wanted to contribute, but then kind of gave up on it. I think there's a lot of ideas that get thrown around, but because you need to go through this process, people don't really pursue it. Of course, for
Yeah. So,
larger ideas, larger proposals, obviously, yes, always go through Politeia, always get explicit approval.
yeah, so there is a way of onboarding developers. I forget what the method's called that where you don't have to put a proposal together. But I quite like the idea that you just portrayed there, where you say, right, well, this developer just wants a couple of grand to try and make a widget or whatever. So
I
there's certain funds available that could put that together.
I believe
Sorry.
Apple saw some on Twitter was suggesting we do hackathons to attract developers or attract new ideas for development. The Latin America team, a few years ago did a few of these, and some of the ideas were pretty interesting. Where they analyzed data on Politea. But that's certainly something to look into. It's just a matter of again, someone, leading that and putting forth that proposal to organize all of that. That's kind of the difficult part. And how much do you ask and how much do you give out? That's really the difficult part when it comes to these proposals is what amount of money can you ask for?
Yeah. I mean, I think people like Google, they do Google Summer of Code, where you can literally say, right, I've got two mentors from the Decred development team that will happily mentor a couple of undergrads or whatever for 6 weeks. And they specifically have to work on something Decred related, like they have to fix elements within the Politeia system or CMS, or they have to work on DCR decks or something like that. Very, very specific tasks. Um, Other projects that I've been involved in the past, Blender 3D in particular, every year they put together a Google Summer of Code. And because we're an open source program, and so it might not be as easy for cryptocurrencies, but something like that would be quite good. And even if we put our own together, where we said, look, let's have a Decred Summer of Code where we've got these two mentors. It doesn't have to be top level people that want to work with a couple of interns. Bringing in postgrads or people that are just finishing off their degree is an ideal way, really. But as Jake put it a week ago, so it's actually is quite a lot of hard work. So it does have to be thought about. But I'm all for that, hackathons or set programs where you say, right, for 6 weeks we're going to try this person out, and just go down that route. Jay said, "Why BR devs don't ask for money from the treasury?" Don't know.
That may be privately funded, I think. But yeah, that's a good question. Why there isn't a formal proposal? I personally would love to see some sort of professional UI designer come in and maybe um, make it look beautiful. But that's
Yeah.
just an idea.
One thing I'd like is to themify it. So you could literally choose the theme as you want to, or you can create your own theme. So if you like a specific way something works, you can literally have theme templates. I'd quite like to see that happen. I know they've started that with the font size, but um, a lot of flexibility there, I reckon. Next question, then, unless there's anything else you want to talk about there.
No, we
So,
have more questions.
oh
I
my
can
god,
ask the
go
next
on,
question.
go on, yeah, go for it.
It's this is I don't know if we'll talk too much about this one. It's what are the next milestones for DCRD in terms of optimizations and features like multi-peer downloads? Now, this is a question as someone who's not a developer, it didn't really make too much sense to me. And shout out to B who really understands this type of stuff for asking this question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any opinion on this.
Well, the only bit that I could really kind of put together is the fact that Dave does do lots and lots of refactoring. So DCRD, if you've ever been involved in making software, you'll start with an initial idea, and you'll build all of these things out. You'll build all these functions. You'll build all these modules out, and you won't. And me specifically, I build it in the worst possible way, but that's just me. And it ends up being inefficient. So you end up with a completed program that works. It's brilliant, but it's not as efficient as you'd like. So then you end up going back over and you refactor lines of code and you make things work a slightly different way. So the outcome's still the same, but how you get to that outcome is a lot more efficient. And it's one thing that I appreciate that Dave does a lot on with DCRD. He refactors it. He writes these lovely comments. So for each function and each kind of element in DCRD, he's actually got these really nice kind of statements that tells you exactly what it does. And that's what the part of it I understand now. When it gets down to talking about how BTCD is being used for various things, I'm not really sure about that, but I certainly do appreciate the amount of work that goes in to making it future proof, and that's basically what refactoring does. It makes it future proof. It makes sure that when new developers come along or something has to be changed, if in a distant future, 100 years, Dave's not around and the core team's not around, someone will be able to look at what he was doing and understand how to kind of work with it. And that is ridiculously important.
Right. Okay. The next question is any plans for Dandelion or Dandelion plus plus for Decred? So for those that don't know, Dandelion plus plus is a um, it deals with basically not linking your IP to transactions. So it's about privacy. It deals with privacy. And from what I understand, this is the major thing when it comes to privacy and cryptocurrencies. Supposedly, your IP is linked to your transactions. And Dave said he would like to see it. It's not a priority, and I think that would be just amazing to see external outside developers who want to implement this submit a proposal and say, hey, we want to do add Dandelion to Decred. It'd be perfect. And this is why outreach is so important. Is what if these developers out there just don't know about Decred, that doesn't know about its proposal system?
Yeah, it'd be nice to see the Faro guys because they're currently going through the process. If they fancy getting paid to do a bit of work on that, but Dandelion Plus Plus looks crazy interesting. Actually, I mean, just a little bit of what I understand about it is it basically sends out your transaction rather than to the whole network in one go. It sends it out to one node, and then it sends it out to another node, and then another node. And the more nodes that pick it up, then it starts to propagate across the whole network, and that basically obscures where the transactions come from. Which yeah, it does look quite good, and that's been implemented on Pharaoh. I believe it's already part of Monero. I don't know if it's a part of any other platform. If anyone else has it, but those two, the main ones working on it, I think.
Very well said. Thank you. All right. Next question is let's see. Is the following attack on proof of work chains realistic to pull off? And does the drop of subsidy to 1% make it worse for Decred? And is also somewhat alleviated now by difficulty adjustment algo being made more responsive? So this question is basically asking, I guess it's talking about the attack vectors on the chain. I
Yeah,
think this was covered a lot in previous episodes. Basically, um, proof of
it's
stake is
basic.
the main factor in security. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's basically looking at what happened when well, I don't think stall is the right word, but I'm going to use that, and I apologize if it's not the right word. But when we did the consensus and we stalled for 3 days while we tried to find the next block, I mean, it's just looking at whether somebody can push the difficulty up to say an I don't know, 50 petahashes, and then all of a sudden turn all of their machines off, and then kind of take another or turn all their machines off and actually stop it and then kind of produce all these blocks all in once. Because after we got started again, and then about 3 or 4 days later, maybe a week later, then we started producing blocks really, really quickly until it kind of restabled. And that was the attack vectors is can somebody deliberately do that? Now Dave said, of course that's possible, and it's possible across every single blockchain. One interesting thing that he said is there could be mechanisms there could be mechanisms there that basically says if blocks are produced too quickly, we could actually set a rule that says it's invalid or something like that, which I thought was quite interesting. But I think that was generally what he was alluding at, and Dave said it would be ridiculously expensive, but of course it's possible.
Very well said. Thank you. Yes. Okay, next question is when will it be simple enough to develop the application side on the Decred platform? So, and any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this looks really interesting actually, and this is what we was getting at before, where the application layers, what can we put on top of it? What kind of applications, useful products can we put on top of it? And David already said previously his pivot will be to make um, proper decentralized NFTs. Not ones that point to URLs, not ones that get populated on the blockchain and just add all these massive amount of bloat. Um, so that would be one of the first applications, or certainly from his perspective, the current applications that we already have, DCR Dex, which is using several opcodes to allow for um, atomic swaps. So where you've got locking mechanisms, that's one of our opcodes, um, and obviously Bison Relay, which uses the Lightning Network. But yeah, the application layer is where I see the future for Decred. It's certainly in terms of use cases. I know a lot of people don't agree with me on here, and a lot of people want everything to happen on chain. They want it to be the chain to be scalable, but realistically, if you want money, you have to keep this junk away from the chain. If you want proper decentralized money, you have to keep this stuff away from the chain. And whether you like it or not, the best weapon we have right now in terms of layer two is the Lightning Network, and that's where the scaling is probably going to happen for us, and the application layer is going to happen for us. And very very controversial. A lot of people don't agree with me on that, but I don't see how it would be possible to do it any other way, really.
Yeah, we have the tools here for people to build those applications. I hope there's some really exciting ideas in the years to come, and this is what makes being a part of Decred so great is there's always that potential in the future. Whereas in other projects, really you don't see too many ideas coming forward, or they don't have that infrastructure to add things and pay people. So we're very fortunate to be in Decred, and hopefully the rest of the market starts to understand that.
I mean,
I'm
yeah, sorry, just another interesting thing that a lot of people don't appreciate is the long-sightedness of all this. Is Decred actually had all of these things years and years, not didn't have them years and years ago, but they had them on their plan years and years ago, and they've really thought this stuff out, and that's why it kind of makes a lot of sense to me. They've always kind of said, look, this is how we're probably going to have to scale. This is how we're going to do this particular thing, and yeah. Whereas a lot of these new projects that are just throwing things together now, and they're getting a lot of promotion behind them. Solana, like you said before, is one that is being heavily promoted right now, and it's like, well, if they grow at the scale that they want to grow, I don't see it not being run by data centers and things like that. Sorry, Exus, I interrupted.
sorry. I'm gonna jump down to the DCR Dex developer questions. If there's any questions we're skipping over that you want to ask that you really like, we can go back to. But this was the question I asked in the Ask Me Anything, and it was basically asking about the Dex, the status of the rebrand, the market maker bots, and the status of USDC. And we got a really fantastic answer that basically the rebrand's coming along. They don't know exactly what the name will be, um, but it's coming along. And we got some great answers. That the market maker bots and arbitrage bots are pretty far along, and they should be here. I hope by the end of the year. I hope that's the case. I saw on GitHub that they merged the UI for the market maker bot for the new UI, so that's really good. And the arbitrage bot is really interesting how it connects to exchanges, and hopefully that brings a lot more volume and liquidity to our decks. It's really odd that lately the dex has been almost trading lower than the exchanges, because historically it was the opposite. The dex was kind of leading the way, and we've seen almost the opposite, which is
The, f-
odd.
the
At the
fees
very
got
least, all
on
the sorry, go ahead.
sorry, the Bitcoin fees were ridiculous. That's why it's gone down so much. I tried to do a trade on Thursday, and the fee on Bitcoin was 230 sats. It was mental. It's down to about 40 again now, but it went mental. It was literally, and about 2 weeks before that, I tried to do a trade, and my trade got stuck for about 12 hours. So I think that's a lot of the reason why we're getting hit so hard at the minute. is
So what
yeah.
I saw, the in USD, it was about $16 to do a transaction.
Yeah.
And when you do the transaction on the DEX, if you can help me remember, you and the seller, for instance, both of you pay your own Bitcoin transaction fee, right? So you're only paying one transaction fee. You're only paying one Bitcoin transaction fee. So
So
for you
you
to do the trade, you'd be paying about $16 when it was high.
Yeah, so if the first part of it is the transaction, so you do the initial kind of sync or whatever it is transaction. So one of you would pay Bitcoin, one of you would pay DCR, and then you get the redemption where you pay the opposite. So you get each person gets one fee in DCR, one fee in Bitcoin. Yeah, but yeah,
Okay.
that's I think that's a lot of the reason why it's gone down so much. It was just obviously because DCRDEX is on chain, and because the main pair is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin went up to 30 £30,000 and £30,500 on, I think it was Thursday or Wednesday, and that literally that was the time I was trying to do a trade, and the fee just went through the roof. It was I was like, oh my goodness, and since then all of the pairs have been sort of reducing, which has been really unfortunate. But which brings you on to your next point, I'm sure.
So I want to ask, so you said it got stuck for 12 hours. So basically you started the transaction and because the fees were shooting up, your transaction never got processed by
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it went up
And
so much that it, because DCI Dex puts it basically in the middle, so it gives you a really nice fee, but you always kind of pay a little bit more to kind of compensate for that. But it just jumped. It's like boom, it's gone.
yeah, speaking of fees, the other part of that question was what's going on with the ERC20 USDC, which obviously no one's used, unfortunately, and it's quite unfortunate because there was a lot of hype around that. Now, of course, the Ethereum fees were quite high. I think they've gone down a bit, but still, we haven't seen anyone use this. But the good news is they've already integrated Polygon Matic USDC, and on top of this, Circle is now issuing native USDC. So they're kind of making the transition to that, probably because they like the low fees. Everyone wants the low fees, and sending USDC around and having to pay a dollar or two or whatever it is was really not good for their infrastructure. So the deck steps have integrated it. It's already working. They're just waiting for certain things from Circle before they take it the extra step further.
I think for most of us that just ultimately, if I'm trading for Bitcoin or if I'm trading for USDC, there's only really 2 points I'm doing that for. The first is the most common one, which is to pay some bills. So you'll send it to Bitcoin, you send it out to Coinbase, you'll pay your bills. That's kind of scenario one. The second scenario is when the price gets so high on Decred, just to kind of save yourself from the reclining price, you'll send some to either Bitcoin or you'll send some to USDC. And at the minute, it's just absolutely crazy how much that costs. How much Bitcoin costs just to get into it, and it frustrates me. I've got to be honest because I think to myself, this is meant to be evolution. This is meant to be something that is so much bigger than anyone ever expected, and it is clunky. It is clunky. If you've ever used, if you've had, doing on chain transaction during the peak time of Bitcoin, it's clunky as hell, and it really frustrates me. Is actually, I'll do a transaction, I'll send Extra some Decred, and it will go through like that, no problem, every single time. The expectation is going to happen within 5 minutes or within 3 blocks. That's it. It just happens. With Bitcoin, it really depends on what day it is, and that kind of frustrates me. And it's one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to the Polygon USDC pair. Um, and we had about 2 years ago, we had a stable coin discussion. And at the time, I couldn't get stable coins to work. I was trying UST. Do you remember that? I tried that. That actually had the lowest fees. We all know what happened there. But I also tried the Ethereum USDC, and also USDC, yeah, and I also tried the USDT, which is the Tether one, and all at the time had these massive fees. Now, recently I've been doing some tests with the Polygon, so I've been sending some just $1 or $2 transactions to my Trust wallet and back to Coinbase, and it was so efficient and it's so cheap. And I just kept doing it, just kept sending it just to see if it worked, see how quickly it did it, and see how much it cost. And it was ridiculously cheap. Like it was less than a cent. It was almost nothing. That's why I've been collecting some Matic, so I can keep doing that. But it's one of the reasons I'm looking forward, because I honestly I don't want to hold Bitcoin at the moment. I'm just so disenfranchised with that. I don't want that. I want something that's going to be able to get me to fiat as quickly as possible, and the rest I'm just holding in Decred. I'm staking, and when the application layer gets built, I'm going to be using that more and more and more, and I have high hopes for that. But the USDC pair on Polygon, once it's available, is going to be absolutely epic, and I think that'll be the changing point for DCR decks. And hopefully Bitcoin gets itself sorted, and these block times and these fees just stable themselves out more. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, as we go into this next bull cycle, because Decred's done these consensus changes to reduce the proof of work reward to 1% and brick ASICs, hopefully we don't see as much selling, and we perform a little bit better. And because we perform better, we attract new people, new developers, new talent, new partnerships, new integrations. Um, the other day, I think it was yesterday, I made a post basically, hey, if you guys have any ideas for partnerships, integrations, let me know. I'll reach out. I reached out to Trocador. People are, talking about exchanges, and it's like a lot of these exchanges don't accept listing fees anymore. Kraken does not accept listing fees. So it's not a matter of, oh, we should just pay these people. You can't do that anymore. And I think it has to do with like, SEC regulation. No, not any coin can just come along and pay, and any scam coin can come along. Um, but if you
Oh,
have
that's good. I
ideas
didn't
for
know that.
integrations or partnerships, reach out to me and I'll move it forward. Because what we see a lot is people suggesting ideas on Twitter, but no one's actually taking action. No one's actually like really trying to move things along. I'll try to do that on people's behalf if people have good ideas.
I think I said this earlier. I said what you're doing on your channel, on your Twitter channel, is absolutely amazing. Some of the positive outreach and the fact that you're engaging with people in the community that some have kind of shunned a little bit, which I'm not a fan of. I've got to be honest. I think we should be all a lot more respectful to each other while we're talking online. We may not agree with opinions, but there's certainly ways to conduct ourselves, which you know. I think that's an absolute must. And I think Exodus is a great example of that. And let's see if these things can happen. And I know we've tried it all before, and I've tried several things in the past which have failed miserably, but that doesn't mean we should stop. At some point, somebody is going to resound with these people, and hopefully we'll get through. And I've said this openly on Twitter. I'm not a fan of sexes, but centralized exchanges. I should probably say before that goes weird on the audio. But people want them. So if the community wants them and the stakeholders say, "Hey, I want this," and they're willing to put, I don't know, £100,000 down on it, or whatever, let's make it happen. If that's what it is, put it to the vote. Let's not be armchair managers. Let's not be derogative about what's happening. Let's just get, we have these systems in place, and they do work. There's no ifs or buts. They work. So just get involved and do it. And I mean, Exodus is a prime example of somebody that's putting his money where his mouth is, and he's getting on with it. And I really appreciate that. Actually, I think that's absolutely brilliant. I think it's going to come on leaps and bounds. And I'm not sure when the next Vanguard proposal is, but I certainly have massive hopes now that this is going to encompass the marketing and the promotion side of things as well. I think it's been a brilliant initiative.
Yeah, we certainly want to step up the marketing and outreach while at the same time being relatively frugal and being smart with money. Certainly not going the route in the past where you're attending these crazy events that cost a lot of money, or hiring a PR firm that wants six figures to do things. I think we're moving on the right track. The treasury spending is really, it's quite frugal. Like I said earlier, if you compare it to Zcash or Dash or these other kind of Decred's main competition, so to speak, our expenditures are very reasonable. They're very reasonable, and there's probably room for more expenditures. We have a question here from Loo. He says, "Are you guys working with Secret Network?" I No, we aren't. If you have any ideas for a partnership, or ways we can collaborate, reach out. Join us on chat.decred.org. I'm not exactly sure what Secret Network is. but you know,
I've heard. I think it's ticker SCT. I think, um, and I have heard of it before, and I've watched it a couple of times. I think it is a massive privacy coin. But that's as much as I know there. What does Jay say? Is there any
um,
plans to do another frequently asked questions with another dev or JYP? Absolutely. I don't see why not. What do you think, Exus?
I think Dave answered a lot of the questions people mainly ask about roadmaps. Or if you look at the interview we did with them back in May, it was about an hour and a half. The episode they answered a lot of the questions. Um, as I said earlier, Decred is mainly feature complete. There's not too much we can add that's going to affect the core, right? So the main things were the proposal system, the on-chain voting, decentralizing the treasury. So in all these aspects, Decred is a DAO. It is feature complete. Um, I think Jake's main focus might be Bison Relay. Um, for you, those that don't know, there's plans to add uncensorable stores and mobile. I think that's kind of his main focus right now, but I'm not completely sure. But if you guys would like to see some sort of future Ask Me Anything with featuring Jake, I'm sure that can be arranged. Maybe a bit further in the future, just because this recent one was so this the current one was so recent. But yeah,
Yeah, we tend to get Jake and Dave on at least once a year so far, haven't we? So and it's always nice to kind of talk to them. But those guys are busy. There's no ifs or buts. I think they are very busy. But it brings us to the hour mark. Anyone watching, we've had quite a good showing tonight, which is absolutely brilliant. But anyone watching want to say something before we head offline? Chuck us a question. We'll try and get it answered. But it was amazing actually. This Ask Me Anything with Dave and some of the other members was absolutely amazing, and kind of it always makes me appreciate how well spoken and how knowledgeable our devs are, and it makes me excited for the future. And um, I was going to say one other thing, I just remembered it. Yes, during the next bull run, what we need to remember is that the sell pressure is pretty much diluted now. So once we get over this hurdle of low prices, the sell pressure will actually decrease and decrease and decrease. So which is a really interesting thing. I'm really excited for the next 6 months of that. I was meant to say that when you were talking before, and I completely forgot. But yeah, what did Dave say on our last show? It's the he did a really good phrase. It's gone. It's gone. Something to do with a spring exploding anyway.
um,
So
right, yeah, the perfect storm. Decred is our perfect storm is forming. And I think to complete that perfect storm would be to get a centralized exchange listing in the US. That's what I was going to say earlier is I don't know if you know this, but Americans could trade on Binance up until December of 2021. So as long as you had an account, you were kind of grandfathered in. But towards the end of the year, they were like, "Hey, you have to KYC." And I think not having Americans being able to buy Decred very easily has been very unfortunate, and it should be our big focus. Now, of course, these gatekeepers, it's so difficult to deal with them. Sometimes they want crazy amounts of money, or they kind of just ghost you. So people don't realize this, but uh, Coinbase asked Decred to do Rosetta Stone, their little integration thing, and we did it. We were one of the first ones, and I think we had one of the best implementations. And then they ghosted us. They never added us, and it's like, what can you even do? Of course, Decred opted to build its own exchange, and of course, it's atomic swaps. It works a little differently, but at least that's something we can control.
and one thing I noticed, just as you're talking about Coinbase there, their Rosetta Stone has been the top article in their news for Decred for ages and ages and ages. And then I think it was August, one of Jake's posts made it into the news feed, so it overtook the Rosetta Stone piece, and literally within 2 days it was gone. I thought that was interesting. Um, yeah, so I don't know why that was actually. It was a good piece. I think it might have been talking about Bison Relay actually. I think it might have been one of the Bison Relay posts. But yeah, it made it onto their news feed, and then within a couple of days it disappeared. Um, So yeah, so it looks like we haven't had any news since 2018 when the Rosetta Stone thing was. Is that right? Sounds Rosetta Stone sounds like the language people, but since that announcement was made anyway. Exodus, I think we're coming to the end. Any final thoughts?
Sure. Really interesting to go over this Ask Me Anything. I think it was a great accomplishment. Brought some life into the subreddit. Like I said, if anyone has any ideas for marketing, outreach, integrations, partnerships, be vocal, reach out, and hopefully we can. It helps just to reach out to these different organizations. Like I reached out to Trocador the other day. I was like, I was trying to buy a gift card and it didn't work, and they're like, oh, let us look into it so we can fix it for Decred. And I was like, do you guys have any sponsorship or partnership ideas? Like, well, we don't do sponsorships, but if you guys want to work with us, we're open to it, and hopefully, Trocador or something like that gets integrated into, say, Crypto Power, which is open to doing the swaps. And if they do that, we can be listed as a partner on Trocador's their website, which I think helps. We need all the outreach, um, all the as much network as effect as possible. But anyways, in conclusion, thanks for everyone for watching. It was really good chat, I think.
Yeah, just one final point, just about your not being able to get USDC in America. I didn't realize that actually, and that's quite surprising
Well,
actually.
we,
So
we
yeah,
can get USDC. It's just we can't get
yeah,
Decred.
Decred. Yeah, you can't get Decred in the United States, which yeah, that's a massive blocker actually, and
Of course,
I hadn't realized
you
that.
can do the swaps. There's some certain really small altcoin exchanges you can, if you use like a VPN, you might be able to access. But I'm talking specifically fiat for Decred. You know, Coinbase
Yeah,
mobile users. That's just a huge market. And we were discussing the other day how certain coins go on these pumps and Decred isn't part of the pumps because Americans can't buy. There's a lot of American led pumps occurring.
we've got a couple more questions coming through. Um, how long does it take for a ticket to mature? Mine has been about 75 days already. Um, well, maturity should be 24 hours, but actual voting can be 140 something days. What's the
Yeah.
average ticket lock time? Well, that's 21 days.
I
Oh,
think it's
29.
about a
Adam's
month,
got me.
but it could take up to like 4.7 months. So if you only have one ticket, it's very random, unfortunately. But it will eventually vote and you'll get your funds back.
Yeah. Um, Low the 13th says America shut us down. We can't trade anything. Yeah. I think that's pretty much it, I reckon. Exus, it's been a pleasure as always. Until next month, if there's anything you guys want us to discuss that's going on in Decred or going on in the wider crypto space, or just send us a message, make sure you follow Exus. There's lots of great stuff happening on his for the monthly meme contest for all you meme makers out there. Well worth giving that a go. We had some really interesting ones this month. That was brilliant. And also the promoted tweets. If you've got any ideas for how we can get Decred in front of people, or if you want partnerships that could happen, maybe any ideas there would be great, as Exus said before. And I think we're out. What do you reckon? Take care, everyone.
Yep. No, thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye now.